you sick of New Year's yet? It is still New Year, still getting used to it. Here's 2023, which means we're in a new year for our Decades of Dwarf. We're no longer in 1984, we're in 1985. And we're going to take a look at the January 1985 edition. So, let's plough on in. Today we are back on the lovely green baize table, which must mean that I have cleared my painting queue for the moment, and that is true. So that's exciting. It means we can take a bit of time to take a look leisurely through some White Dwarfs. Let's start with the more recent of the two. Let's start with 1995. And I'm excited, by the way, about hitting 1995. It'll be a few months before you find out why, but I'm very excited by what is coming. We're not quite there yet. Here we are. We didn't look at the cover. There you go. It's another epic cover. Epic in both sense of the word. Here's Mike McVeigh, hard at work on a very famous diorama that I got to see recently at Warhammer World. That was exciting. So good seeing those dioramas in the life. If you have a chance to go up to Warhammer World, the rest of it's okay, but the Mike McVeigh dioramas are something else. They are every bit as fantastic as they look in White Dwarf, and even better for being able to see them. They've obviously been kept in quite good condition. Anyway, sorry, enough of that. I should be talking about the Rough Riders of Attila. Here's another classic Imperial Guard regiment from the time when Imperial Guard was not just Cadians. Last week we looked at the Kazachan Jungle Fighters, the not Predator, not Rambo Jungle Fighters of Kazachan. Definitely not. These are definitely not Attila the Hun in space. But they are, with their Mongolian hats and their hunting lances that explode on impact. Yes, apparently they smell quite foul. That's something I remember from reading that article, they smell quite foul. A look at undead tactics in Blood Bowl. We know my feelings on Blood Bowl, but we also know my feelings on the undead. And it's quite interesting actually. These diagrams are not the most helpful as somebody who doesn't know an awful lot about Blood Bowl besides having played a few games. These diagrams aren't that helpful, but the text is actually quite instructive, and just, I guess, what I've been missing maybe out of the games of Blood Bowl that I've played is that I haven't been playing in the league, so I haven't had a chance to have the advancements that would give the sort of unique flavour. I've just been rolling buckets of dice, which, meh, that seems to be Games Workshop of this era, so there we go. Right. Sorry, I'm a bit ranting about this today. I shouldn't be ranting about this. Titan Legions, the Legio Metallica, not at all derivative of a popular band. This is talking about different ways of using Titans in games of Epic, and the various objectives that you can give Titans, or in fact that you must give Titans in order to feature them in your games. And it includes this rather awesome picture here. This is the thing that always lodges in my mind when I think about Titans, because you've got the little steps here at the base here, and that's clearly this leg. Clearly this leg with its big Gothic arches. And all the tiny little Space Marines, or whatever they are, I think they're Space Marines, running down the steps there, giving it a sense of scale. And I never got the impression from even the Forge World Titans that they're really that big. I like the homemade scratch-built ones that people have made where they're really huge. You know, you couldn't really, almost human-sized. In fact, I think somebody did make a costume for a child. A Titan costume, which would be quite fun. I feel like you need that. You need it to be absolutely the focus of a game. Like, you need to be able to send, maybe you could besiege a Titan, like try and send people scaling up the side of it in order to fight. That would be quite good. Anyway, amusing ideas that will never happen. This was the Warhammer where Sylar, the Chaos Spawn, was released. I don't know about you, I find this quite a disappointing model for a Chaos Spawn. I mean, Chaos Spawn are supposed to be really weird, and like, this guy's got two faces and a crab claw coming out of his chest. This guy's got axes for hands. This guy's got, I don't know, some kind of weird. I mean, this might in fact be Sylar, actually, I think, because he's described as having like a beaked, chomping tail, and this is like basically a wolf, like a flesh hound kind of thing. He's supposed to have a lizard face, but that looks like a very wolfy or slightly monkeyish face to me. And then there's no beak to these tails at all. They're just spined tails. Quite disappointing. I feel like Chaos of this era, as I think I mentioned last time, is very uniform, not very chaotic at all. Oh, that was a very short. There you go. This is a very short thing on Space Marine Terminators. I was expecting to see quite a few more pages on that, but no, that is it. That is all there is on Space Marine Terminators there. Razorbacks in Titan Legions. Knights, again, I see what they're trying to do with these metal models, but I quite like the Paladins. The others just, they look like they wouldn't work. And maybe the Lancers sort of look a bit sort of sprinty, which I guess is the idea, but the Castellans just look like the legs really wouldn't work on them. Whereas the plastic Knights that you get in the box, actually I think are the best design of the lot. They've obviously got a very cohesive design and feel to them, and the Paladins don't differ too much from that, but the others, they've tried to take aspects and then make them slightly different, and I don't feel like it works anyway. Oh, I'm being ranty today, haha. Here's a fun thing. Here is an absolutely enormous, everything that we've got in the cabinet Warhammer Fantasy Battle. This is insane, right? Basically everything, that's one side. And here's the other side. And not only is it everything that's in the cabinet, they didn't have quite enough in the cabinet, so Mike McVeigh's brought his Wood Elf army out to join them. Yeah, this is an insane battle, but I have fought some battles of this size now through the Oldhammer community, and it's interesting. I think the organisers of those battles, in fact I'm sure the organisers of those battles, because I know who they were, have been reading this and looking at ways that they deal with reserves, the problems of just getting that number of models on the table. Magic, what happens when you've got, 24 wizards on either side? What are you going to do with all those power dice? Who gets to cast spells and when? There are some good tips in here for running those big battles. It does need some serious refereeing just from experience. You need to make sure that absolutely have a timed magic phase and don't let people go over that. Things tend to be very, very organised for the first 2 or 3 turns, and then it all sort of falls apart, and you've got people over here who are playing turn 5, people over here who are still on turn 3. It all gets rather chaotic, which is fine, it's fun, but yeah, if you're going to play a big battle and actually annotate it like this, you have to be much more disciplined, which is probably easier when you've got this few players. You're talking 4 people aside. We had like 8 people aside. Even so. And they've got overall commanders who are in charge of making the big decisions on their forces, and it's a fun battle report to read. Shall I tell you who wins? Yeah, the Orcs and Goblins absolutely slaughter the Empire and the Wood Elves. It's a complete bloodbath, but it's a very fun battle. There's some nice photos, and it's really great to see the photos, to see all of the miniatures out on the battlefield. I mean, I know these are staged shots after the battle was taken, but these are shots that will crop up again and again and again in various articles of White Dwarf. and on the backs of the White Dwarfs, and in the various supplements, just because they happen to have all the fun things on the table at the same time. And why not? Why not indeed? I need to get a steam tank. Not this one necessarily. Maybe I should just make one. There we go. And we've got Ultramarines versus Snakebites on the back cover. Right, there's the colourful world of 1995. More exciting times are coming, I promise you. I know they are. I know they are because I was there. Now let's take a look back to 1985 with this very different aesthetic. Another charming Chris Achilleos cover that I have no idea what it is referencing. Somebody will. Golden Heroes is here, so now we're going to get more superhero stuff. we're going to get superheroes and Blood Bowl, two of my favouriteest of favourite things, haha. And Ian Livingstone is discussing here how we're not in 1984 anymore. So hooray, everyone survived the George Orwellian classic. Actually, no, it just took a bit longer to get there than everyone was expecting. Welcome to 2023, hooray! Alchemy in RuneQuest. This is an interesting discussion here on the Time Master RPG. This is a time-travelling adventure, or time-travelling role-playing game, and as you can see it's got a few expansions from different time periods, and the chappie here is fairly positive about the way that it handles it, so that's good. I've not come across it personally. He's less complimentary about these Chill series, which I also haven't come across. The covers look interesting, but curiously they're both from the same company, Pace Setter Games, that I've also never heard of. Critical Mass is still talking fantasy and sci-fi after 1984, of course. More on the manufacture of magic items in D&D. They've been discussing the complexities of how you do them, and this has got some suggestions for rings, armour and shields that you might like to craft, and the various ingredients that go into them, which would I guess be quite a good motivating force for a wizardly character who wants to create these things to go, or to send adventurers on a quest to find the things that are required for the various items. So that's quite a good launching off point there. The Travellers are still doing their Star Wars parody, and here are some objectives for Travellers in Traveller rather than Travellers. And they're fairly straightforward. I don't think there'll be anything much surprising anybody here. There's only a very short section on alien beings and their motives, but if you're struggling to find a reason why somebody might be adventuring in space, there's one. I always think this is a caption competition, but it's not. The advert is about them not having anything to say. Beyond the Shadow of a Dream, a scenario for fighting fantasy and basic D&D. I have participated in a fighting fantasy campaign. It was a lot of fun, considering that you've got two stats to roll off on. Note to the game designer, if your design is good, if the world is good, if the story is good, you really don't need to roll for very many things, just to let the player's imagination take them where they want to go. And this largely does it. This is a city adventure, so it would be quite a good thing for a group that's just recently come into a town or a city environment, and is in between adventures while they're doing their shopping before going off somewhere else. This would fit in quite nicely. you note from the map that it has the obligatory Thieves Quarter, Merchants Quarter and Red Light District, and you think, oh no, not another one of these teen written D&D scenarios that's all, let's gallivant around with the whores in the Red Light District. And that does play a not insignificant part, but actually there is a very good reason for it, and it's not just thrown in for the sake of it being there. It is fundamental and integral to the plot, and it works in quite a nice way. My only criticism is that this very small passage at the end here gives the DM the things that they need to know about the main protagonist, I guess, although he, she, it doesn't form much of a part of the story besides people looking for he, she, it, her, him, it. But it would be helpful to know that, somewhere here, because it's referenced quite a lot within the body of the text here that's mostly concerned with describing things that are going on in all of these different locations, but you sort of have to suspend your okay, I don't know what that means, I'm going to wait until I've read the whole thing and then it will become clear. And it does become clear, but it would be good to have just this little introductory paragraph at the front so that you could just read through and understand everything as you were going. Thrud the Barbarian falls foul of an angry wombat farmer. The letters page talk again about Joe Deaver and Gary Chalk's painting. We've talked about that previously. This has a pull-out in the middle for some amazing books. This Alan Lee Castles, if you don't have it, I got a copy a couple of years ago. It was one of my lockdown reads. It's fantastic, and it has some really lovely pictures in it because it's Alan Lee and he does really lovely pictures. Yeah, very, very much recommend that. And then just endless. Here's all the Tolkien things. Well, actually, here's all the things that aren't Tolkien that you can buy. Here are all the things that are Tolkien that you can buy. It's a bit of a shame that it talks about how these are great Christmas presents when this is the January edition. If this had come out in probably November, but maybe December, that would have been more useful, I would imagine. Yeah, Christmas gifts, there you go, but never mind. The Dark Usurper, you can see either side of this little handout. This is a Fighting Fantasy solo adventure, so essentially it's a mini game book. I haven't read it. I did think maybe I could do that, because I didn't do the Castle of Skulls, which I said I was going to do. I sort of took a look at 4 volumes of it. I was like, I don't have time for that, but I might have time to do this, especially if I die before I complete it. So yeah, stay tuned for that one. I might do that as an entire playthrough. That seems feasible. Here's another superhero set of scenarios. Well, not really scenarios, but ideas for scenarios, ideas for incorporating, in fact, scenarios from different genres and other role-playing games into superhero games, which doesn't take an awful lot of doing, but there are some helpful hints in there, I guess, just for converting the genre slightly. Here's a look at some bugs for D&D. So if you wanted your players to be plagued by creatures very small and creatures not so small, there you go, you can now. A few treasures for RuneQuest. This map is extremely familiar, and in fact this is a competition for creating a scenario based on this map, and I don't know when it appears, but I'm fairly sure, looking at some of the locations here, I'm fairly sure that in a month or so's time we're going to have a several page scenario based around this map, and I remember it being quite good. So let's see if my memory is correct on that one. Here we are with Tabletop Heroes, and this is quite cool because we're looking at, well, it talks a little bit about dry brushing, which is why it's called high and dry here. It talks about dry brushing, but we don't need to worry too much about that. I assume we all know what dry brushing is now, but let's have a look at the Orc Balloon and the Dwarf Hang Gliders and the Orcish Artillery here, that are the creations of the Players Guild of Nottingham. And I certainly have seen home taken photographs of these things and this ship, which doesn't get even a mention anywhere in this text, but I assume this is Players Guild of Nottingham still. It looks very much like it, on a big table at Games Day. I think they've got a version of the Citadel Castle in the corner of the table as well. If you have photos of those boards, I always love to see them, because they're really great, and it's a really good example of the creativity that was around at the time, and still is, if you look in the right places, not maybe if you look in the mainstream DW forums, but well, maybe it is, maybe that's being unfair. There's just plastic kits make it easier to kit bash, and there's less home brewing, but these certainly some wonderful creations here, along with some Tom Mayer troglodytes, and some Citadel dungeon equipment, and some halflings going on some kind of walking party. And it very much looks like the background there is the front cover of The Hobbit, I think, just that various bits of the cover have been pushed below the table. That looks like the Hobbit cover to me. And they've credited here that the photographs are by Joe Deaver, Gary Chalk, and then some of the models are courtesy of the Players Guild of Nottingham. So that answers a question in one of the letters of previous edition, where they were talking about whether these were Joe Deaver and Gary Chalk's photographs, or whether they were sent in by other people. It does look like they are photographs, especially certainly those ones by Joe Deaver and Gary Chalk. Santa's having some problems with in an industrial an industrial dispute, so just proof that nothing changes and we really are heading for 1984 again. So in this case, yes, the modernisation of Santa's delivery is being questioned by his reindeer with rather explosive effects, and Goldyguk rushes in a little bit too early, hoping to bonk a dwarf, and yes, ends up with more than he asked for. What I find quite interesting among all of these adverts for role-playing things is on the back cover, where there's an advert for 2nd edition Warhammer Fantasy Battle. So this has now got a nice shiny colourful box, colour covers for the 3 stapled volumes on the inside of it. It's going to get some brilliant scenario packs, Terror of the Lichmaster, Bloodbath at Orc's Drift, the Riding, that's Blood on the Streets, isn't it? What are the other ones? Tragedy of Macbeth, of course, the Magnificent Sven. Anyway, some fantastic things are going to happen for this, which at this point is very much still feels like a sort of role play on the tabletop. It's sort of feels like small battles rather than big pitched battles. Although we've seen the Siege of Minas Tirith game in a recent edition shows that you can put quite a lot of models on the table. This is still looking, I think, very much sort of small skirmishes in the midst of a bigger adventure, or certainly that's how it feels with the scenario packs and the campaign stuff that's associated with it. But there is no mention of either this or 1st edition throughout the duration of the entire magazine. It's only referenced here on the back cover, which I think is interesting, given that 10 years later miniatures were the entire sway, and if something new was released, there is no way that it wouldn't be plastered throughout and featured in battle reports and shown in painting guides. And it's all about, you know, this is the new thing, I'm going to tell you what the new thing is, and I'm going to show you lots of pictures of it. This feels very understated, which is, you know, is a good thing, but also from the point of view that I like miniatures, it would have been nice to know a bit more about that, and perhaps it would sell a bit better. I don't know if it had issues selling, Obviously not, as it got 6 successive editions. But yeah, I feel like if I had bought this magazine, I would be interested to hear a little bit more about it throughout the duration. But maybe that divide between role players and wargamers is what stopped it. They are still selling themselves at this point as a role-playing games monthly, whereas here this is a miniatures hobby supplement and miniatures catalogue. So we've gone very much role-playing to very much wargaming in 10 years, and that transition is not happening imminently, but it's happening between these two, and we may get to it one day and we will find out exactly how that worked. But I hope you've enjoyed this look at the first magazines of 1985 and 1995. There is more to come. I will continue to try and do these things. If you would like to know when there are new videos out, it's very simple. You hit the subscribe button, you hit the notifications button, and you leave us a comment, and you like the video, and that all helps it be visible to more people, and then can spend a bit more time making these videos. But I hope that's useful. And again, if there's anything that I've whizzed past here and you'd like to have seen it in more detail, or you think the next video would be useful to, I don't know, read more of the magazine before flicking through it, who knows, I could be like professional and do that. I do that, by the way. I do read them both, but sometimes I forget. Then it's a couple of weeks before I record the video and I forget what I was going to talk about, so maybe I should make notes. Maybe that's a New Year's resolution, I should make notes. But hey, spontaneity is good too. Anyway, alright, enough waffle from me. Like, comment, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications button, and you'll find out when we do the next White Dwarf video, which will be in February sometime, and hopefully there'll be other videos coming out in January before then. So watch the channel. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time.